Hi, I'm Miss Kim with the Florence County Museum. Welcome to Afternoon Art Club. Today is our first meeting for the December Afternoon Art Club for 7th and 8th graders. We're going to be talking today about color and learning a little bit about color theory. Then we're going to begin a complementary color op art design that we'll be adding color to next week. Now, before we get started with our December lesson, I want to just go back to our November lesson and review what we did, give you a preview of what that looked like. If you did not participate in November sessions, you can watch those on our YouTube channel. So those videos are available. All of the October and November videos are together. So those are the 2-point perspective treehouse lesson and the radial symmetry line design. So you have access to all of that on the museum's webpage or the museum's YouTube page for free. So that should be easy to access. But for the month of December, we'll be starting a whole new project. So you're not behind if this is your first session. I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see what we created last month. And I just want to give you just a few words about that before we start December's lesson. So let me share my screen. Okay, and hoping I'm sharing here. There we go. All right, so for the month of November, we started out by folding our paper and cutting out one of the triangles from our folded papers and creating a line design. You could use your initials. These are my initials, KLW, and we wanted to make sure that our letters touch the top and bottom edges, or the top and the side edge, like my letter L. If you did not want to use your initials or you felt like that was too complicated, then you could also just do a plain line design. So that's what this one is. I just created some lines. I made sure that they were touching at the top and at the bottom in all instances. And then we copied that design around our paper. So we transferred the design to each section of our paper. We transferred by rubbing. We lifted it up and then traced out the letter. Then last week in our session 2, our second session of November, we traced over all of our lines with a crayon, and this one used black crayon, this one used blue, and we used a watercolor resist process. So we added watercolor paint inside of each of our shapes so that we got this really colorful geometric radial symmetry design. So once you've completed your designs, which I hope you guys have finished them up, once you've completed them, please email them to me at flomus_edu@me.com. So please make sure you're sending in a good photograph of your artwork. When you take those photographs, lay them flat on a table and take the photograph from directly above. That way you're getting a nice, well-lit, centered photograph. You don't want to take it with your photograph kind of propped up so that you get a skewed photo, kind of like this one is, or to one side or to another side. You want it laying flat with your camera directly above so that you get a nice, centered photograph. So please go ahead and send those. Email me your finished photographs so that those can be added to our digital exhibition of student work, which will be opening in January. So you'll be able to see that on our website in January. All right, so I'm going to go back now. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and welcome you to December's lesson. So we're going to be talking today about color theory. Now this lesson is going to include some different color schemes. So we're going to talk together today through how to figure out color schemes and using a color wheel as a tool. So today's lesson is going to be a lot of preparation, a lot of preparatory work, but we are going to be doing that work so that next week when we're starting to add color to our op art design, that we're very well prepared to add color. So we're going to start out Now the op art design we're going to be creating, this is the drawing we're going to be doing today. Op art creates an optical illusion. So we're going to be working together to create this kind of drawing today to prepare for the color we're going to be adding to it next week, which will really make it pop and really enhance the optical illusion of a wavy surface on our flat sheet of paper. This paper is not wavy, so we want to give that illusion of a wavy surface on a flat sheet of paper. And we'll be working on that for the month of December, basically, for the next 2 sessions, today's and session 2. But before that, we're going to be working on this color theory sheet together today. I'm going to work through this with you, and we'll spend the majority of our time today working through this color theory sheet. So you have this in a PDF in the chat box. So if you're watching live with us today, you're going to find this in your chat box. If you're watching via recording, you'll find this sheet in the email that I send out with the recorded video. So this will be attached to the email in the recorded video if you're watching on YouTube. So please check your email boxes and see if you can find this color theory page. If you cannot print it, if you don't have a way to print it, then just use the page as a guide and you can kind of make your own just on a plain white sheet of paper. If you got a kit from us at the museum, you'll just have some plain white paper in there, and you can still do everything that's on this sheet on a plain white sheet of paper. Just use this on your computer as a guide for what you're creating on your white paper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. It's a lot of back and forth today. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, go back to my desktop, hoping that that's still working. Oh no. I'm going to try and reshare it so it's not skewed. Give me one moment. One moment here. Close out of that and reshare. Let's try doing it this way. All right. Sometimes you just have to restart the program. Okay. Let's just delete the last session. Okay, and I'm going to try and get this zoomed in for us. I like to do this before we even start, but when it messes up on me, then we have to go back and lock that focus. Okay, there we go. We're ready to get started. So you probably, you can follow along with me on this sheet. If you're able to print it out, it works great to get it printed out and use it. But if you cannot print it out, again, just get a white sheet of paper. You can write the word color theory on top. You can make a circle with 6 pie slices and write the words inside. We are going to be using this color wheel as a tool to complete all of these other sections of the paper. But again, this is all something that you can write down just on a white sheet of paper. You don't have to have this sheet, but we do want to go through all of the exercises that are included on this sheet. Now, a couple of other things that you're going to want to get together just to complete our color theory activity today. Your watercolor strip, if you still have some watercolor strip left available to you, that's going to be really helpful today. I like going through these activities with paint because I really feel like you get a better idea of how colors work together and especially how they mix together. We're going to be doing some paint mixing over here when we're using paint. But if you do not have paint available, you can use crayons, you can use colored pencils, you can use any kind of coloring thing that you have available to you. Even markers will work for this activity. So colors, markers, watercolor paint. If you have some watercolor paint in a watercolor palette, just like this, you could use that as well. So any of that will work for our activity today. If you're using the watercolor paint strip, you're going to want to grab your paint swab and a little bit of water. I also like to have a little towel close by just because that's really helpful for drying off my brush in between washing. You can also use a regular paintbrush. If you have access to that today, you're welcome to use a regular paintbrush. Either one of these will work, your paint swab or your watercolor brush. your watercolor strip or a watercolor tray. And if you don't have access to these, then crayons, colored pencils, or markers will also all work just fine. So I want to start out by filling in our color wheel together. Our color wheel, a color wheel is a tool that helps you to understand the relationships between colors. So I want to start out by identifying some colors and understanding how colors are organized on the color wheel. Colors are not randomly placed on the color wheel. Their relationship to each other tells us where they belong in this circle. So we're going to go through a process of adding color to this so that you really understand the relationship between these colors as we're working today. So I'm going to use my paintbrush and add a little bit of water to it. And again, just like last time, if you're using the watercolor strip, it really helps to add a little bit of water to the watercolor strip and just let it kind of soak in before we start trying to pick up paint. That'll help soften up that dried paint so that we can pick it up. So I'm just going to use my brush, and I'm going to start with red. Red is at the top of my watercolor strip here. And I'm going to find the little pie shape that is labeled red. And I'm just going to add some red paint in there. Now again, this isn't really complicated painting that we're doing. And the paper that I'm working on is not a super high quality paper. It's just printer paper, so it's kind of soaking in a little bit, but that's okay. All of that is going to be fine for what we're trying to do. Okay. So we went ahead and added the color red to our color wheel, just in the section labeled red. A little bit more. Okay, great. All right, so we've got our red section. It's harder to read the words, but now we have the colors, so we don't necessarily need those. All right, and I want to begin by adding my primary colors. Now, primary colors are also going to be located right here, and we can fill that in as we go as well if you would like. You can fill in your primary colors. These are not labeled, so you can just throw it in there into one of the sections. Not labeled, so I'm just going to paint that in. Okay, so we have red right here. Now, our primary colors are colors that cannot be made by mixing. So there's no two colors that we can mix together to get red. Now, like I said at the beginning, a lot of this is probably review to you. You probably have learned about primary colors in school before. But just in case it's new to you, I like to spend a few minutes explaining what primary colors are. And those are colors that cannot be made by mixing. So our second primary color that we're going to be painting with today is yellow. So I'm going to add some yellow to my yellow section of the color wheel. Just add some yellow there. Okay, and I know this is a primary color, so I can go ahead and add that to my primary color section over here. Get some of that yellow paint. Again, as that water sits on it, it's going to help dissolve the paint, and you'll be able to pick up stronger color. Okay, I'm going to put a white paper under it so that it's not quite so leaky. There we go. That's a better image. Okay. So we have red and yellow, two primary colors, and our third primary color is blue. So red, yellow, and blue are our primary colors, and these are the colors that cannot be made by mixing. So there's no colors we can mix together to get red, no colors we can mix together to get blue, and no colors we can mix together to get yellow. So we need to kind of start with these colors. But the great thing is that if you have the paint colors red, yellow, and blue, you really can mix just about any color, especially if you add black to that, black and white to that list. You can mix just about any color there is. So primary colors are important for that reason. So far in our lesson, we have established that red, yellow, and blue are our primary colors. you get a little glob of paint, you can kind of work that out with your paintbrush. Or just kind of pick it up. There we go. All right, and you'll notice that on our color wheel, these are evenly spaced out around our color wheel, and there is a color in between each one of these. So the three primary colors are not grouped together. They're placed with a space between them on the color wheel. So if you're drawing your own color wheel on a white sheet of paper, you're going to draw a circle that has 6 pie slices, and then you're going to put red, yellow, and blue evenly spaced around the color wheel so that there is a space in between each one, just like that. And here's our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, right down at the bottom. Now, we can practice a little bit of color mixing to help us find how we're going to get these other colors, and that's going to help us understand how the colors work together. So I'm going to put a little bit of red right here on my paper, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. When I have red and I have yellow, it's a little bit tricky because of the kind of paper I have. But when I have red and yellow and I mix those together, see if you can see it better over here. I'm gonna get an orange color. So it's a little tricky to see. Doesn't look too orangey right there, but I'm gonna get an orange color when I mix together red and yellow. You can almost see it better on my watercolor strip, how I'm getting a very orangey color up here. Okay. Now, if I want to mix together yellow and a little bit of blue, then I'm going to get green. You can see how that turned green right there on my paper. And if I want to mix together red with a little bit of blue, I'm gonna get a nice violet color. So these are not wonderful examples, especially the orange. It didn't want to mix so well on my paper here. But when we mix red and yellow, we get orange. When we mix blue and red, we get violet. And when we mix yellow and blue, we get green. Now let's go back over to our color wheel and take a look at that, because the color wheel will actually tell you the exact answer to this. So let's look right here. If we take red and blue and we mix them together, we get violet. Now right here, we had blue and red mixed together to create violet. So the color wheel tells us what will happen if we find the color that's in between the two primary colors that we're mixing. Then that will tell us what will happen when we mix those colors. So I'm going to actually just use my violet paint here to add it to my color wheel. Now I could do some color mixing there, but I've used this paint strip a lot and it's starting to kind of not be the best anymore. So I'm just going to add my violet paint right here. Now, the colors that are mixed when we mix two primaries together are called secondary colors. So our secondary colors, we have a little secondary color wheel right down here. These are the colors that are made by mixing two primary colors together. So when we mix the primary red and the primary blue together, we get violet. Now again, this may seem really, really simple, but it's always a good review to go over how these colors mix together, and especially when we're looking at a color wheel, what the relationships between colors are. Because this is very, very important to artists when they're thinking about using color in their artwork. If they don't understand, if an artist does not understand the relationship between colors, it can definitely show up in their artwork. So you really need to have a good understanding of that. So the next one is green. Now you can see here when we mix yellow and blue together, we get green. If we go over to our color wheel and we find yellow and blue, right in between them we'll find green, because if we mix yellow and blue together, we get green. So I'm going to go ahead and add green to my color wheel. Again, This doesn't have to be very, very neat when you add your colors into your color wheel. This is really just a tool. You're going to be using this color wheel when you're choosing colors for your op art design. So you do want it to be easy to read, but if it goes outside the lines, it's not a big deal. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and add my secondary green here to my secondary color wheel. Okay, there we go. So now we have two of our secondary colors. Red and blue make violet, blue and yellow make green. And our very last one is orange. So if we go here and we find that red and yellow make orange, we can find our red and yellow on the color wheel, and right in between them we'll find the home for orange, where it belongs. It belongs right between the colors that are used to mix it. So I'm going to show you another way that we can use the color wheel to understand how to mix colors. So let's take a look at this. I got the orange in there in my color wheel. I'm going to pick up a little bit more and put that in my secondary colors, because remember, when we mix together two primary colors, we get a secondary color. And we mixed red and yellow, which are both primary, to get orange, which is a secondary. Again, if you only had red and yellow paint, you could just mix those two together to get the secondary color, the colors. Okay, so I've shown you how you can find out what colors will be created when we mix two colors together. But let's say that you wanted to do something that's sort of the reverse of that. Let's say you know you want to mix violet paint, but you're not sure what colors you need to mix together to make violet. So if we look at our color wheel and find the color we want to mix, and then we look to the outside of it, red and blue are what we need to make that violet. Or let's say that we wanted to make green. We needed green for our artwork. Then we'll find the green, and then we find the two primary colors on the outside, which are yellow and blue. And that's how we know what to make for green, what to mix for green. And then orange. If we have our orange color, we know we want to mix orange, but we're not quite sure how to do that. We can look to the outsides on the color wheel and see that yellow and red are on either side of orange. That means we mix yellow and red to get the orange. So now that we've identified the positions of all of our colors on the color wheel, and we've identified primary and secondary colors, we want to take that a little bit farther, and I want to work with you to identify some color families and some complementary color schemes, because you guys are going to be using a set of colors. You're going to decide on a set of colors to use for your op art design. And I want you to have a good understanding about these relationships. So let's start with warm colors. Now the warm colors are the colors, I remember this by thinking about fire. So when we think about fire, those hot colors of fire that we often see are the colors on the left side of our color wheel here. Red and orange and yellow are the colors of fire. So I'm just going to add that into my warm colors section. So you can keep working with your strip there. I'm going to switch over to my watercolor palette. I'm going to use a variety of materials today so you can kind of see a variety of materials in use. Depending on what you have at home, you might be using a watercolor palette. So I'm just going to find the red, add that, the warm red. Remember, warm colors, fire is hot, so warm colors are the colors associated with fire. That's an easy way to remember it. To me, that really helps remember which colors we're talking about. So if I'm trying to remember the warm colors, I always think fire is warm. What are the colors of fire? Orange, red, and yellow. And I'm just going to paint those in here. And I like to go ahead and paint them on, like we could just say red, orange, yellow, those are the warm colors, but I like to paint them on my sheet both as a reference to help me remember and also as a way for me to just see these colors together. Because if I can see them together, then I know what they're going to look like when I put them on my final painting. So this is kind of like a practice sheet that will help you preview the colors before you paint them on your final artwork. And that's one thing I really love about a worksheet like this that helps you work through what these colors are going to look like. So cool colors, for me, I like to think about cool colors as being the colors of the ocean or of water. I think about just the cool water at the beach. And so green and blue, those are easy ones to choose as cool colors. And violet sometimes can be a warm color if it's with these colors, or it can sometimes be a cool color. If it's with blue and green, it tends to be a little more cool. And if it's with red, yellow, and orange, then it's going to feel a little bit more warm. But I'm going to go ahead and add that to my cool colors. So I'm going to put the violet down here. Again, just depending on both how much red and how much blue are in your violet, it can feel cooler or warmer. Okay. So there's our violet, then our blue. This is kind of a greenish blue. Try if this one's a little bluer. Okay, blue. And our green. Go ahead and add that green. Okay. So these are our cool colors. Green, blue, and sometimes violet. Again, sometimes violet can go towards warm as well, just depending on how you've mixed the color, but also what other colors are near it. That also helps define whether it's warm or cool. So warm colors, remember, I like to think of fire. Fire's hot, so warm colors. And cool, I like to think of the colors of water. Or the colors at the beach of the ocean. And that's what helps me remember what colors we have here. Now, I want to jump over to complementary colors. We're going to save these monochromatic tints and shades for the very end, but I want to jump over to complementary colors because we need to use the color wheel to find out what complementary colors are. Now, we can think about complementary colors several different ways. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So yellow and violet are complements. Red and green are complements. And orange and blue are complements. Now, when we say that these colors are complements, we don't mean that they always go really well together. What we mean by this is that red never looks more vibrant than when it's next to green. Violet and yellow are never going to look as bold, or they will never have more contrast, is maybe another way to say it, than when they're next to each other. And we can look at why that is on the color wheel. So let's take a look at the color wheel. We know that when we mix red and blue together, we get violet. There's nothing about violet that has yellow in it. There's no yellow in violet. And that's why they really contrast each other. They're contrasting colors. We call them complementary. Sometimes that's a little bit deceiving. There's no yellow in violet. So these are complementary. They have a lot of contrast. Likewise, if we look over here at orange, orange is made by mixing red and yellow. There's no blue in the mixture to create orange. So orange and blue are going to contrast each other. And the same is true with green. If we look at green, green is mixed by mixing yellow and blue. There's no red in the mixture that creates green. So these colors are really going to look very strong next to each other. They're going to contrast each other. Now, down here at the bottom, we can kind of paint that to get a good visual of that. So let's start with red. We can put our primary color in first. So I'm going to put my primary right here, my red. And then I'm going to go back up to my color wheel. Again, it doesn't have to be perfectly neat. I'm going to go back up to my color wheel and I'm going to find what the complement of red is. And I do that by going directly across on the color wheel, opposite on the color wheel. So the opposite of red is green. So I'm going to come back over here to my green paint, and I'm going to put it right down here. And you can see how bold and vibrant these colors look when they're next to each other. How much contrast you can see between the two colors. All right, so now we have red and green. So let's go over and find the complement of blue. We'll start by adding that blue color. Mix that a little. Adding our blue right here at the top. Okay. All right, we've got the blue there. And if we go directly opposite blue on the color wheel, we find orange. So come over to the orange, find that, and add that in our complementary colors right down here. Again, it's not really about neatness here. It's really just about seeing the colors next to each other. So blue and orange are opposite each other on the color wheel, making them complements. And let's go to our last primary color, which is yellow. See the primaries on top. This lets us be able to see that nice and bold. Okay. Primary on top. Okay. And then we'll go over to the color wheel. When we find our yellow and go directly opposite the yellow on the color wheel, we come to violet. So we're going to add violet right here next to our yellow. You can see how bold and strong those colors look next to each other. So these are complementary colors. When you're working on your op art design, there will be a time where we're going to choose complementary colors. Now, I'm not going to tell you which set of complementary colors you need to choose, but if you complete this sheet, you'll have a good idea of how these colors look next to each other: red and green, blue and orange, and yellow and violet. Now, the last thing on our monochromatic tints and shades on our worksheet is monochromatic tints and shades. So monochromatic is all variations of the same hue or the same color. Now, I want to choose, I think, let me see what would be a good one for this. I think I'm going to choose red for this. So I'm going to start out by just putting red right here in one of my blocks in the middle. So I could have put it in the second one, or I could have put it right here in the third one, which is the one I chose. But I want to put just the color itself right here in one of my blocks. Now, when we're creating tints and shades of a color, we're basically adding white or black to the color to make it lighter or make it darker. So I'm going to kind of turn this around a little bit to show you what we're going to do. So I'm going to pick up some color here and add it. I'm just adding a little bit of white. This already had a little bit of red in it, which is actually why I chose red for this. I'm going to add some white right here on my palette. Now, if you're doing this with a paint strip, there's not white on our paint strip, but you could just add more water to dilute the color to make it lighter. We do have black on the paint strip, so you will be able to do that. But since we're working with watercolor, if you're using the paint strip, you could actually just use a little extra water to help make that color a little bit lighter instead of using white. So I'm going to get just a little bit of red and I'm going to add that in to my white here. And you'll notice it's a little bit pink. Pink is actually just a tint of red. I'm going to paint that right here so you can kind of see what that looks like. Now, tints are your hue or your color with white added. So your color, my color was red. There's just my plain color red. And here's my color with white added. And let's see what would happen if I added even more white to that color. And add another little area of white. And just pick up a little bit of this and add to it. You can see it would be even a lighter tint. So if we add more white or more black to a color, it either gets lighter or darker. Now, all I did in both of these kind of pink colors was add white with the red. So we have red, red plus white, red plus even more white. Now let's see what happens if we add a little bit of red plus black. Now when I'm mixing tints and shades, I always like to start with the lighter color first. You probably noticed that I added white first and then added a little bit of red. But since I'm going to be adding black to this, I'm going to start with my red because that's lighter than the black. I'm going to start with my red. I'm going to come over to my black and pick up just a little bit because a little bit of dark color can go a very long way. It's easy to add more. It's not easy to take it away. You can't really take it away. So red plus black, you can tell even on the palette that this is darker than my hue, than my original red hue. Just like that. All right. So now you kind of have an idea. If you just have red and black and white, you can really create a lot of values. This is another element of art is value. You can create a large monochromatic color scheme. So we just used red. This was just the plain red, red plus white, red plus even more white. And here we have just the regular red and then red plus black. And let's see what would happen. I don't have another square for it, but I'm going to add some more black to this. Red plus even more black. We could put that over here just to kind of get an even darker, deep dark red. I'm going to add some more there so you can kind of see. So all I did there was add a little bit more black to get an even darker red color. So practice this week. Practice making these different color schemes. Practice complementary colors. Practice monochromatic, making a monochromatic, what we like to call a value scale, a monochromatic color or value scale. Really learn which colors are the warm colors and which colors are the cool colors, because once you've completed this sheet, again, this sheet in and of itself is not a really beautiful work of art, but it really will help you when you go to create your finished artwork. So I'm going to set all this to the side and get out. So I'm going to keep this handy throughout the next couple of weeks, because as I'm working on our finished artwork, as I'm working on the op art, I want to be able to come back to this as a reference. This is going to be something I refer back to over and over the next few weeks. So now let's get started creating our op art drawing. Now, this drawing is very, very simple to do. It might look a little bit complicated. It really is not. What we're going to do is start with a white sheet of paper. You may want to use a ruler. So I'm going to grab a ruler, and you're going to need a pencil with an eraser. You can also have just a spare eraser handy in case you need to do a little bit more erasing, but there's not a ton of erasing that needs to be done with this. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how to do this. It's really quick. If you have questions about this, again, you can always send me an email and I'm more than happy to answer questions. But you can also watch the video or just this part of the video over again to help you, or you can stop and start it. That's one of the great things about watching this on YouTube is that you can pause it while you do part of it and then come back and watch the next part. So feel free to pause, start, rewind, fast forward through the parts that you know and are comfortable with. Now, the first thing we need to do is find the center of our paper. Now, if my ruler were a little bit longer, I could go from corner to corner and make an X to find the center. But there's actually an easier way to do that when you're just working with a sheet of paper and you don't mind folding it. So I'm going to fold it in half, the short edges together, just like that, and make a crease. I'm going to open it back up. You can see that crease there. And now I'm going to fold it, the long edges together, just like that, and make a crease. Make sure that you are matching up your corners because this doesn't really work if you don't match your corners up. All right, and now where those two lines cross each other is the center point. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a dot right there. This is a little bit like when we did perspective drawing, but just with one point. Now, I'm going to go ahead and draw some lines, and the lines that I folded, I'm actually going to go ahead and draw those in. Go ahead and draw those lines in. So I'm going to draw a line halfway that way. And then one this way, just like that. So I started out with just like a T shape here. Line down the middle and a line down the middle going this direction. Now I'm going to go from the corner to the center point. So I'm going to line my ruler up on the center point. Here's my center point. I'm going to go to the corner, line it up with the corner. I'm going to make a line. And I can move my ruler down and continue that line all the way to the other edge, just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing the other direction. Line it up in the center, line it up the corner, make a line. And I'm going to do that same exact thing going right down here. Okay, so now I have an X that goes through the center, and I have a line, a horizontal line and a vertical line. Now we're going to add 4 more lines in here, and here's how we're going to do it. We want a line that goes in between these two, so a line kind of right here, and it's going to go all the way down to the middle here. Now there's several ways we could do that. We could measure what the middle is right here. So we could measure, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 inches. So we could measure over 2.5 plus 1/4 of an inch to kind of get a line right there. And we could do the same thing over here. 1, 2.5 plus 1/4 inch here to get halfway. So I just made a little dot there and a little dot there, 2 3/4 inches in. And then we can connect those 2 dots and they should line up through the center point if we did it right. So see, my ruler is on the center point. It's on this top line and on my bottom line, and make a line. But we actually don't even have to do that. We can just make it a little easier and just kind of eyeball it. So we'll put our ruler on the center, and then I'll move it till it looks like I'm about halfway. Just kind of eyeballing it. It looks like that's about halfway. I'm not really measuring anything, and do it just like that. And they both look pretty good to me. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to do the measuring. If you want to be very, very precise, you can do the measuring, but you do not have to. Okay, and then we want to do the same thing between these two and between these two. Again, so I'm going to go between this line which is halfway, and this line, which is all the way to the corner. So again, if I wanted to really be precise and measure, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4¼ inches. So I could go 1, 2 inches and just 1/8 of an inch. It's a little bit over like that. And then do the same thing at the top, 1 inch, 2 inch, and then 1/8 of an inch like that. And then connect this dot up here that I made and this dot down here that I made. And if I did it right, it should go through the center point, which it does, and make a line like that. Or just like last time, I need to make another line between the center and the corner. So I need a line right through here that goes all the way up through there. And I can just eyeball it, which is actually how I prefer to do it with this. Because if it's not exact, as long as it goes through that center point, it doesn't really matter if it's exact or not. Okay, so that's what I've got. And that looks pretty good to me. Now, if I were to count my lines, I'm going to start right here just so you can see. I'm going to start with this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. And if I keep counting, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 lines all the way around that all meet in the center. So you should have 16 lines that meet in the center going all the way around. Now, if you don't have that number of lines, you need to go back and re-watch this section and do it again, because it actually won't work out right if you don't have an even number of lines. So you could have 14, but you cannot have 17 or 15. You need to have either 16, 14, 18, an even number. Okay, now, so we've got our kind of starting point. You can kind of see those lines coming out here. And I want to show you how simple it is to create this optical illusion that makes it look like these are wavy, going in and out, all the way back to a center point. So it doesn't take very long. So let me show you. So we're going to start with any 2 lines. I'm going to start with this one and this one. And I'm going to draw in the middle of this some kind of hump shapes. So I'm going to start by creating a hump shape just like that. Now, you can think of it as frowny faces and smiley faces, or humps and U shapes, however you want to think about it. I'm going to start out with this one, and I'm going to make 1. And then as I move to the outside edge, I want them to get farther and farther and farther apart. And I can even do one a little bit closer in here, a little bit closer together. But all of the curved lines I make in between these 2 lines need to be the same. They all need to be this kind of rainbow shape that I'm making. Okay, so I'm going to make a few more of these. And as I make them, I want them to get farther and farther and farther apart. So they're kind of close together here, a little farther, a little farther, a little farther. Okay? So then I'm going to kind of turn my paper, and I'm going to skip this section and go to these 2 right here. You have to skip one. So we did 1, skip this one, do this one. And I'm going to try to kind of mirror how many I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So I'm going to try to do something similar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those kind of line up with each other. 5. Kind of want to make sure they're sort of lining up with each other. And here I have room for sort of 1/2 of a 1/6. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in. It won't make it all the way over to this line, but I can kind of imagine that it would, just like that. Okay, so now I have rainbow shapes here. These are upright rainbow shapes, right? Going all the way back, getting farther and farther as they get farther from the middle. And now I'm going to connect these with a smiley face shape or a U shape. Okay, so I'm going to go a downward curve instead of an upward curve. So I'm going to find the edge of my rainbow here and the edge of my rainbow here, and I'm going to connect them with a smiley face, just like that. I'm going to find the next one, and I'm going to connect it with this one with a smiley face, just like that. And I'm going to do it again with the next set, just like this. And the next set, just like that. And the next set, just like that. And we need those edges to touch. They have to touch. And you can already see that optical illusion starting to form. And we could imagine that if this came all the way to maybe here, this might have a little bit of 1, 2 right there. Can't quite reach the edge, but it's close, you can imagine. Okay. All right, so now we're going to turn the paper, and I'm going to go back to just my rainbow shape here, and I'm going to do another one. Now, if you want to do your rainbow shapes all the way around, or your upward curves all the way around, and then come back to add your downward curves or your smiley faces, whatever you want to call them, your U shape, that's totally fine. So I could keep going, skip one, add my rainbow shape like that. Oh, if it comes off and then comes back down, that's totally fine. So I'm going to do maybe one more just so that you'll get to see. You can see this doesn't take a long time, but you do want to be a little bit careful that everything is lining up. Okay, so that's why I like to not go all the way around. I like to kind of stop and fill in the downward slope one as well. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make my smiley face now, my downward curve or my U shape, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go ahead. Remember, I'm connecting from this point to this point. So they have to connect here to here, here to here, here to here. And if this one doesn't have one to connect to, I'm just going to kind of imagine where it might connect, maybe just at that point, and add it just like that. And then turn, and I'll go to this middle section, same thing. And I can just add it in. The most important part is that you make sure you're alternating your upward curve and your downward curve. And you can see how this is coming together. And you'll notice on this one that I just did it all the way around. So I curved up, curved down, curve up, curve down, curve up, curve down, curve up, curve down, curve up, down, up, down, up, down, up, back down to where I started. So you should do this all the way around your paper. Continue on with this all the way around your paper. So I'll just keep going here, just making my lines the opposite of the ones on either side. Okay, just like that. And I just keep going all the way around my paper. So your job this week is to finish up your color theory worksheet. Again, if you don't have a way to print the worksheet, then just use this as a reference and go ahead and just paint on your paper, just on a plain white sheet of paper. You can go ahead and draw these shapes if you want. You don't have to draw squares. You could just paint it right on your paper, just a little area, just like I did here. I just painted right there on my paper. You could do it right on your paper. And go ahead and practice all of these skills. So please practice creating a color wheel and using the color wheel to help you find primary colors, secondary colors, and complementary colors. Then find your warm colors and your cool colors. Practice mixing your primary colors to make secondary colors. And then practice making a monochromatic color scale. So all the way from light, which is your tints. Your tints are a color plus white, and shades, which are a color plus black. And remember just to put your regular plain color in there also. That helps you kind of as a reference to make sure that your tints are lighter than your regular color and your shades are darker than your regular plain color. So go ahead and practice all these skills this week. And then create your op art drawing before we meet again in 2 weeks. So let me tell you what that date is going to be. Next time we meet, it will be December the 14th. On December the 14th, I'm going to stop sharing. On December the 14th, we will be taking our op art designs and adding color to them. And we are going to be creating using some color schemes, especially ones that we've identified on our color theory paper. So please be really familiar with those complementary colors, be very familiar with cool and warm colors, be familiar with how to find primary and secondary colors, and how to mix monochromatic color schemes, because we're going to be revisiting this next week, and I'm going to assume that you know how to do it. If you have questions or you need help, please email me, or if you're watching live with me today, I'll give you an opportunity to hang around and ask questions after I stop the recording. For those of you who have finished your designs from the month of November, please go ahead and email those designs to me as soon as possible so that we can be preparing them for our online exhibition of student work, which will run the entire month of January. Okay, I hope you guys have a wonderful next couple of weeks. Enjoy the beginning of the holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you on December the 14th at 4 o'clock or by YouTube video by December 15th at noon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.